Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Price. I recognize my friend from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you all for the service that you provide to our nation. And let me also, Mr. Chairman, thank you for mentioning Bill Young. Bill Young, as you said, is a national treasure, but for us in Florida, well, he's just a very special icon. So thank you for mentioning his as well. Gentlemen, a few issues. Let me just kind of throw them out there, and so you all can kind of respond to them. Southcom, it was mentioned briefly. We all know the issues in Latin America, whether it's the instability and some not so friendly players like Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, even though nature may take care of that one soon. Evo Morales in Bolivia, Rafael Correa in Ecuador, Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua, etc. While at the same time, Iran, China, and Russia are making, frankly, very concerted efforts to gain influence and power in the region, including the sale of advanced weapons. So I have obviously serious concerns about what sequestration would mean for our operations and our ability to deal with the issues in Latin America, but as well as drug interdiction. I understand that sequestration could have frankly, a devastating impact on the interdiction of drugs. If you would comment briefly on that, it would be helpful. Number two is Guatemala. In 2005, in the 1980s, under President Jimmy Carter, the military aid to Guatemala was suspended because of concerns of human rights. In 2005, the aid began to flow through the foreign military sales, for example, to Guatemala. And in 2008, Congress started allowing international military education training, IMET funds, but only to certain components of the armed forces. Now, currently, our government works very closely, hand in hand with the Guatemalan counterparts on drug interdiction and on security operations. Members of the Guatemalan military participate in UN-sanctioned peacekeeping operations in Haiti and Lebanon and Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan. So clearly, the Guatemalans meet at least UN's threshold for those guidelines. So I'm not quite sure why they're still not receiving that aid. And are you all going to be trying to get state and Congress to rethink that policy, which I think is, frankly, makes no sense whatsoever. And lastly, we've heard, and we're all concerned about the budgetary impacts that sequestration and the CR is having on you, and they are devastating. I was, frankly, shocked to hear in some press reports, I believe, last year about, I believe the Navy is spending $200 billion in biofuels. According to press reports, it's at the rate of $26 a gallon. Two questions on that. Is that, which I think is just, frankly, amazing. And I know that the Secretary of the Navy mentioned that he wanted to create a market, a world market for biofuels. So that's what, it was not because for our national security interests, it was to create a world market in biofuels. Is that, and I believe the Secretary said he was going to spend $1 billion on biofuels the next year. Is that off the table? At a time when we are, again, according to press reports, and we know it's true, when the Navy is not able to send a carrier task force out, are we still going to be now, at this time of sequestration and CRs and tight budgets, are we still looking at spending, close to whatever, $26 a gallon or hopefully less? And what are we doing there? Three questions, three issues. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, if I may, I'll answer the question on biofuel. The Navy's total budget for alternate fuel, and that includes biofuel as well as others, is $17 million. $11 million of that is testing different mixtures of fuel in addition to pursuing the testing and evaluation of other alternative energy sources. The other $6 million is for research. The monies frequently quoted with the larger sums are outside the Navy. They're DOD sources which you apply for. It's called a DPA fund, and I'll have to get you the specific of that acronym, what it stands for. And over a 2-year period, a 2 or 3 year period, when you add all that up, if the Navy were to get that funding effectively held in escrow and apply for it, then it could total the number of about $200 million.
So, Admiral, that's, and right now, that's, I would assume that that's in the list of priorities of the very tough choices that you're having to make. I'm assuming, and that's just when you get a chance, I'd like some information as to, is that something that is really low on the priority list, or is that still something that is, because I know it was a very high priority for the Secretary. So I just want to make sure that if you could, you don't need to do that now, but just let us know where that is in the priority list.
I'll provide that for you.
Great. And then the issue of Guatemala, is that something that, do you all disagree with my assessment that Guatemala should be now receiving, because they are receiving funding, but just not their army. I think there are other parts of it, and is my assessment wrong? Is that something that you all are looking at? And thirdly, remember the other issue about drug addiction with, and how sequestration will impact that.
Well, I would just say, Congressman, that decisions like that are based obviously on our policy decision, but also some legislation. There's amendments out there that limit our ability to provide aid in certain situations. I think that's why we aren't able to do that. So until either they can be in compliance with the legislation that's been developed, as well as determined by the State Department that they're meeting all those requirements, we are not authorized or allowed to spend money. I'm not completely familiar with Guatemala, but I do know it stands in that category right now, and that's why we're unable to spend money there.
Any comment on the drug interdiction efforts? And my understanding is that that it would be a rather dramatic reduction of our ability to interdict narcotics.
Yeah, I think I'll pass that on.
In the maritime sense, sequestration will affect it. And the deal is our force structure is going down, and particularly the ships that we employ down there. But there's also a shift going on, Congressman. We're going from our frigates, using our frigates and some destroyers, to littoral combat ships, which are our new class of ship, very fast, a lot of volume, and have already proven their value down in the Southern Command. Also called a vessel called a joint high-speed vessel. It's a catamaran, very high speed. It too, we will deploy it soon to the Southern Command, and it's custom-made, among other things that it does, for counter-drug, and has proven itself in exercises. So we're evolving in this regard. We've got to get more innovative, and as our strategy says, our footprint will be, by direction really, of fiscal direction, smaller. But I commit to you, we value the importance of the mission. We'll do whatever we can. It's a balance in our global force management allocation plan. But we have other things up our sleeve that we can do to bring to that.
With the CR, would that in other words, how affected would that effort be due to sequestration, and would the CR, I guess it's the CR plus, how would that change that scenario?
We can get a spending bill. Once again, now that's a horse of a different color, especially for this year. Now we have the operating funds for this year that we can go back and revisit and do the balance. And try to get back those operations, including Operation Continuing Promise down there, where we would send a comfort. So these are things that aren't interdicting drugs, but they're very important because they help preclude people from being interested in becoming drug runners.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.